East Africa. Officials from the United Nations are warning that it is climate change that is bringing extra rain to the region, which has led to unprecedented locust breeding. The massive swarms could emerge in coming weeks as young locusts mature to breeding age and begin hatching more youngsters themselves. It sounds scary. Officials are urging the international community to contribute millions of dollars to help control these insects. If the swarms are not stopped, it could bring wide-scale famine to Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, Tanzania, and Uganda. And you're going to have issues, of course, as usual, with people fleeing areas where they cannot cultivate land. The French President Emmanuel Macron is taking steps to protect Western Europe's tallest mountain. Macron has announced plans to limit access to Mont Blanc and for a new government agency to combat what he calls the fight of the century. CNN's Cyril Vanier tells us more.
At France's highest mountain, a high-profile visit by the French president to a natural wonder under threat. In the heart of the Alps, Emmanuel Macron walks through a massive glacier that has been admired for centuries. Now it is disappearing rapidly.
This lake did not used to be there. Before, the glacier extended almost down to the village. And now, little by little, you can see more and more rocky debris instead.
The mer de glace, or sea of ice, has shrunk by 8 to 10 meters each year, receding 2 kilometers since 1850. Researchers believe that by the end of the 21st century, 80% of the glacier could be lost forever. This will be the fight of the century, Macron vows after his visit, announcing protections for Mont Blanc, including a protected zone, tighter restrictions, and higher fines for littering. He also unveiled a new national biodiversity agency and other broader measures to combat the climate crisis.
The acceleration of the glacier's shrinking is also proof of the effects that were not always anticipated, including by us, consequences of past actions, and the urgency for us to act today.
In France, global warming reveals itself in more than a dying glacier. Some vineyards have had to change their time-honored techniques as hotter temperatures alter the flavors of the country's famed wines. Seasonal businesses are having to consider a warmer future. At least one ski resort was forced to temporarily close when a lack of snow left slopes bare. It followed France's warmest winter months in a century, matching a trend of rising temperatures across Europe, where age-old natural wonders may struggle to survive. Cyril Vanier, CNN.
It's been a dramatic week in Antarctica where events have caused new concern about climate change. In just a matter of days, the icy continent has seen record temperatures, a glacier break, and a dramatic decline in penguin colonies. Our meteorologist Allison Chinchar joins me now to discuss. And for those of us working in Celsius, it is hotter in Antarctica right now over the last 24 hours than it is outside here in London.
Right, so keep in mind, you're in the northern hemisphere and they're in the southern hemisphere. It is summer there, so it is in theory supposed to be warmer in the southern hemisphere than it is in the northern hemisphere. But with that said, these are extreme temperatures even for this particular region. Here's a look at what we've been talking about. It's these two locations right here, this base and this island. This is where those record temperatures come from. Keep in mind, the World Meteorological Organization does have to go in and verify these numbers to make sure they were accurate. But here's the numbers, 18.3 and 20.75 Celsius. If those are considered valid temperatures, they break the previous record, which was 17.5 degrees Celsius back on March 24th, just about 5 years ago. We're also keeping an eye on this particular area. This is called the Pine Island Glacier. That's where it is for reference. Here's a video of it. You can see the glacier pushing out into the water, and then you begin to notice this. Here is that break that we've been talking about. That's the large chunk that has broken off into the water. For comparison, it's about the size of Atlanta, Georgia. So it's a very large section of ice that broke off. Now, we're also talking about January as a whole. When we look back at the month of January, globally, it was the warmest January on record. In fact, comparing it to the 20th century average, look at this. The all-time January record was 1.14 degrees Celsius at warmer than that overall average. The previous had been 1.12. too. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, this information seems like we've heard this before, you have. Almost 2 weeks ago, Copernicus came out with similar data showing how warm globally we had been, Hala, but also especially a lot of regions in the northern hemisphere. Look at northern Russia. Look at areas of Europe. Also, Europe having its warmest January on record there for the month of January.
Alison Chinchar, thanks very much. I haven't worn my big coat all winter so far. It's the first time in my life since I've lived in London that I haven't. It's interesting. Certainly you feel that the temperature is higher just over the last several months. We will be right back.
And the sad thing about it is these news commentators that devote so much time and energy, they go to these places. It costs money, it costs time. Somebody's got to pay for their flights of going out there. Somebody's got to, analyze what's going on pertaining to the glaciers melting towards taking data, proper data. But whenever you preach this message of global warming over here to the Americans, they rather believe in a fairy tale pertaining to the tooth fairy than they would to believe that global warming is actually occurring. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about the youngsters pertaining to the millennials, but the older group, something has happened to them over here in America because it was brought to their attention about this global warming crisis years ago. And it went through one ear and out the other. And it's pretty obvious that these people over here on this side of the equator is messed up because they rather believe a lie than they would the truth. Not just about global warming, but about other things too as well. Society is messed up over here in America. And whenever you have a society that is taking on these type of characteristics again and again and again and again, year after year after year after year, it becomes very, very obvious that we are reaching a plateau of dangerousness. Danger, Mr. Rogers. Danger to the degree that you can no longer work, you can no longer motivate, you can no longer rally this group of people because obviously their mindset is not set in the same form of reality as what reality is set in. And whenever you're having to deal with a group of people like that, I hate to use this analogy, but it's almost like dealing with a bunch of retards. And I'm not trying to belittle or disrespect people that has mental challenges whatsoever. God forbid anybody ever making fun of people that has mental challenges. But it's almost as if somebody such as myself or Al Gore or others keep preaching the same message again and again and again. And I don't know if maybe it's just become old hat to the point that they think, oh, there's the wolf crying again. There's the wolf crying again. You know, it's one thing to preach it. It's another thing to teach it. And it's another thing to preach it, teach it, and show it. And whenever you have data to prove what you're showing, it should be recognized in a complete different atmosphere, in a complete different form. And once more, we have people in this area that have taken a deaf ear to the miracles that has been placed up into my life towards God the Father, saving my life again and again and again and again. You have people around in this area that rather be conformed in believing that I'm of the devil versus that I'm of the Lord Jesus Christ. You have people right here in this area that has tried to stain. They have tried to corrupt. They have tried to pervert my character to the degree that they would actually be willing to bend over backwards just to be able to say, you see there, we told you Juby wasn't real. We told you that he was a fake. We told you that he was a phony baloney. We told you that he was lying. We told you that he was messed up in the head. You have people that's willing to go back, to bend over backwards in this area, which once more speaks volumes about the mindset. It speaks volumes about how that these people around here have been hoodwinked, bamboozled. They're under some sort of a spell over in Kenton, Tennessee. They're under some sort of a spell in Hopin, Sedonia, Sharon, Martin, Dresden, Union City, other places locally around here. They have been bewitched. And when you're dealing with a group of people that has been bewitched, it becomes a very, very toxic environment. It's the very same thing that happened to the group of people during the time that Jesus Christ was walking and talking amongst us over in the Holy Land. Those people had become bewitched. Those people had become bamboozled. And even though that they had seen the great miracles take place in front of their very own eyes, the day of the trial, they would have actually rather have believed that Jesus was a monster versus Jesus being a good man. Because if those people would have been in their right minds during the time that the trial come forth, they would have fought for Christ. They would have died for Christ. They would have protested for Christ. They would have stood up and said, what you're doing to this man is wrong. Wrong. But instead, what was they crying that day? What was the masses? What was the wholeness of the groups crying out that day? Away with him, away with him, away with this man, away with this man. For this man committed blasphemy. He claims to be something that we know that he's not. No, they only was persuaded by a demon, a demonic spirit of believing that he was not what he professed to be. Something had moved into their hearts and into their minds, in bamboozling these people, making these people blind. Because if they would have known what they should have known, they would have protested. They would have stood in Christ's corner instead of saying, away with him, away with him. They would have done just the very opposite. The reason why that I'm bringing this analogy up, not just in regards of towards myself, not just in the regards towards what went on in Jesus' lifetime, but what's going on right now with global warming. Whenever you have a group of people that you cannot get through to them, even after showing them on black and white, this is what is occurring. And you consistently, persistently do this year after year after year. And they consistently, persistently ignore or deny the facts again and again and again. You have reached the point of working with a society that is basically out of touch with reality. You are basically working with a society that no longer functions. They no longer think. They no longer receive information properly. Their data, information procedures is obviously totally unorthodox and out of sync with reality. Whenever you're dealing with something this horrendous, which I have been since I've come back here now going on since 2014. This will be my 6th year. Just in the next month or so. This will actually, I think it was the end of this month whenever I first showed up in 2014. But whenever you're dealing with a society that is this dumbfounded, that is this blinded, that is this deceived, you're dealing with a toxic environment to the point that the only thing that's going to get through to these people is the very wrath of God. And this wrath of God can come in the form of earthquakes, plagues, floods, famines, diseases, death, drug abuse, divorces, pornography. I can go on and on, probably with 1,000 other different things that can plague these people to the point of bringing them to their knees. Because it's obvious that something has occurred here with this group of people that not just don't believe me, but it was similar to the same group of people that would not believe Jesus Christ for who Jesus Christ was. And it's the same type of atmosphere of the people that refuses to believe that global warming. You can still go to various farmers around here, not so much farmers, but the elderly people, the old people that have been so bamboozled for so many years of not accepting that global warming was real. You can still go up to them, probably about 3 out of 10 in this area, and ask them, do you believe that global warming is real? Do you believe that environmental crisis is real? Oh, no, I don't believe that. I know an individual right now that all of last year put his family through basically hell of cutting wood. He cut rank after rank after rank, cord after cord after cord after cord, thinking just the very opposite, that the world was going to get colder versus being hotter. He put his family through hell, cutting wood, splitting wood, getting ready for, I guess, one of the most antarctical winters that we've ever experienced. The guy, I guess, in total had, give or take, around 25, 30 cords of wood. It was an unbelievable amount of wood that he cut. And he does live in a fairly big house. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but the fact of the matter is, he hasn't even burnt a tenth of the wood that he had cut all of last year towards splitting it and stacking it and putting it up, thinking that we was going to live, I guess, in the Siberian cold front or Siberian whatever. What is wrong with people that has this way of thinking? It's obvious that they're sick. It's obvious that they have been bamboozled, they are deceived, and they refuse to look at the facts. These type of people, me and you and others on this news channel, commentators, could tell these people and show them in black and white again and again and again and again. And these type of people refuses to acknowledge the truth about reality. They have created their own reality in their own minds, kind of like the people over in the Middle East that thinks that it's okay to strap a suicide vest around their bodies and that they're going to die and go live with Allah and drink all the wine and live with 99 virgins. What is wrong with this type of thinking? It's perverted. It's upside down thinking. It is not what you would consider true reality thinking or righteous type thinking. These type of people are the very people that has helped to put us in a very, very stagnant, precarious situation that we're all in right now pertaining to the global warming. And I guess if it wasn't for enough people raising enough alarms like Al Gore and people like myself and people, commentators on the news, I guess that we would literally burn completely up. The planet would literally start melting and dissolving to the point that it become uninhabitable. before these same people would wake up. And I'm sure there's going to be some of them that probably will never wake up, even if they was in the pits of hell, burning, suffering immensely. They would still have a frame of mind that would be unorthodox. They would still have a frame of mind that would not line up with reality. We're living in a very, very toxic time right now, folks, to the point that people has convinced themselves that right means wrong and wrong means right. They're upside down in their thinking. Their whole program in their minds has been transfigurated in a corrupt, perverted way. And if they can pervert and corrupt other people in thinking the way that they think, they feel like that they have achieved something. They think that they've achieved converts, kind of like the people over in the Middle East, that if you won't believe the way that I believe, well, I'm just going to get violent with you and cut your head off. And if I get killed in trying to get violent with you, I'm hypothetically speaking here, and if I get killed trying to kill you, then I get to go and live with Allah and drink all the wine that I want and live with 99 virgins. This is so perverted. This way of thinking is so corrupt. It goes beyond my intelligence to think that people could actually be led into believing something like that. It goes back to what went on with Jim Jones and the theories and the teachings that he was teaching his disciples during the time that he was convincing them to drink this poison. Drink this poison and you will be liberated, he said. Drink this poison and we will be free. And those who wouldn't do it voluntarily, he forced or shot because they wouldn't drink the Kool-Aid, the poisonous cyanide Kool-Aid that killed a vast variety of people pertaining to the Jim Jones legacy. That was one of the sickest, perverted, corrupt individuals that I have ever heard of in my entire life. At the time, whenever I heard of what he done and how he done it. And to this day, that same individual that I'm talking to you about, that cut all that wood last year thinking that he was going to live in Antarctica, he takes the teachings of Jim Jones and says that it has been perverted and lied to by man. That Jim Jones was a good man. That Jim Jones was doing a good service to humanity. Now, when you have the proof in the pudding pertaining to people's thinking in this format, what does the Bible tell us to do? It says to retreat, go away from them people, shake the dust off of your feet, and no longer have anything to do with these people. Because obviously they are dealing with something that you can't even begin to fathom, much less lead them in the right direction in the way of their thinking. The Bible says to shake the dust off your feet and move on. For it would have been better for Sodom and Gomorrah than for that group of people that would not recognize that you are trying to bring reality in a healing type form to their lives, but they rejected it and they refused it. It's the same thing by and large, not with just with one individual, but this whole community around here that refused to acknowledge the message that I had for them that was given to me from God to give to them. It wasn't something that I manufactured. It wasn't something that I chose as a child to say, you know what, whenever I grow up, I think I'm going to get out here and start preaching the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and the 2 witnesses and the end time events pertaining to Revelations and Daniel. No. I was chosen to perform this service. I was chosen by God of being a spokesman pertaining to this message of me being the messenger. But they didn't want to support the messenger. And the reason why that they didn't want to support the messenger is because they was out of touch with the message, or they knew what the message was pertaining to the Holy Bible, but they stoned me because I was one of the messengers that was bringing forth the message. Because they didn't want the message to be translucent. They didn't want the message to manifest itself. They actually thought that if they could withhold, restrain the messenger, that the message would go away. That's how crazy that these people's thinking are. Right here locally, within 100-mile distance of either direction in the Bible Belt area, actually have thought in the past 30 years that has caused us to be where we are today, with all this corruption, all this wickedness, all this bloodshed, being $23+ trillion in debt, over 2.3 million incarcerated prisoners in our federal, state, and local jails. I had come into a region, an area that was just as demented and just as perverted as Jesus walked into during the time that Jesus walked into that area over in the Holy Land. That even to this day, you got people over there, just like you got people over here, that rather pervert the truth and make up their own lies and live in their own fantasy world, in their own la-la land, and ignore the truth of the signs of the facts, just like global warming. We're living in a time right now that I've never seen before. We're living in a very, very scary, spooky time. Especially whenever you have so many people that have been so corrupted. And then they got these pride issues to the point that they're not going to come clean. They're not going to come clean. A lot of them, they're going to take this all the way to their grave towards denouncing Dennis Jackson as him being a loco, towards Dennis Jackson, towards him being bogus, towards Dennis Jackson, towards him being a fraud, towards Dennis Jackson, towards him being a form of an antichrist or a devil. You got people that will literally take those ideals, those perverted thoughts and feelings, all the way to their graves. Just like you had people in Jesus' era that was solely convinced that Jesus was a bad man instead of Jesus being a good man. Just like you got people today that are cutting wood, waiting for the Antarctica cold front to come down. But yet, no, we've got facts, proven, digital facts that contradict any such doings pertaining to an Antarctica cold blast. It's sad, folks. We're living in very, very extreme, sad moments. And I guess some of them are so lost, are so blinded. And I'm just going to use my father as an example. My father come close to death in his latter part of his life at least 4 different times. From major heart surgery to a piece of iron that fell over and almost cut his head completely off. Basically broke part of his bones in his neck structure and his shoulder. And of course, to hear David talk, That was his final blow that actually started him on a decline with his health. But he waited until the day of his death, being in a nursing home, a veterans nursing home in Humboldt, Tennessee. And at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I think reality finally hit him that he was knocking on death's door. He finally awakened to the ideal. Oh my God. I'm not invincible, am I? I'm really fixing to check out, ain't I? And he begged the nurses and the doctors that night, please let me have the phone. Please let me use the phone. I have to contact my youngest son and tell him to try to make amends, to try to make some sort of a do in what has occurred here. And they wouldn't let him because they felt like that he was delusional and delirious, and they said that it was inappropriate to contact a family member at that time of mourning, knowing that David was still trying to hold down a job. So along about 5:30 or 6 o'clock, his vital signs started dropping on my father, and they had to usher him out of the Veterans Hospital in Humboldt and rush him to the Madison County General Hospital in Jackson, Tennessee. And of course, I was working at the time up in Kansas City, Missouri, so I couldn't be by my father's bedside in his actual death, because every time that I'd get around him, he would get frustrated, he would get emotional, he would get to screaming and hollering. He couldn't control his emotions. And I felt like that if I didn't watch, that I was going to actually self-induce his death by allowing for myself to continue to get around him and him become emotional like that, that he would fall into some sort of a coronary arrest. So because of it, I backed away from any type of relationship that I would have rather have had with my biological father. I backed away from it because I didn't want to have to walk around feeling the guilt. Wow, I may have very well helped to cause my father of putting him in an early grave. But as the doctors was evaluating my father, they realized that he was fixing to check out. So they called in the family, those who was closest, and said, you better say your last goodbyes to him while he's still living, because it ain't going to be long. He's going to be dead. And sure enough, my father died that morning. But he died not being able to make an adieu with his family. He died knowing that he was fixing to die. But he died not making restitution of what had occurred in the past, because he was so blinded, he was so sick, he was so bamboozled that it actually took within just a few hours before he actually died that he started realizing that he was fixing to check out. And you got people right here in this area, locally, right here, that are that blind. They're that blind, and they're that naive, and they'll take a lot of this stuff that they have done to the founder of this ministry all the way to their graves until they finally wake up in eternity. And God looks at them and says, you know that guy that you denied for 30 years? You know that guy that you avoided? And you said that he was a fraud for 30 years? Guess what? He wasn't a fraud. He really did have miracles that I helped to create in his life towards me saving his life. He really was appointed by me and chosen by me towards a crown of thorns that was placed upon to his head, towards him meeting one of the antichrists in the last days, pertaining to the two witnesses of the opening of the seals. And even why God is speaking to these individuals in the supernatural world, in the supernatural form, in the hereafter, there will still be many out of that crowd, right here, locally, that will look at God in the face and say, "You're a liar." You know why? Because the truth not be in them. And rather than them coming clean and allowing for God to liberate them in the truth, because of the truth, they would rather take their lie all the way to the end of their existence. And that's whenever great fire will fall down from New Jerusalem and will consume them. You'll have a same type of atmosphere that would and had occurred during the time of Jesus' reign, while Jesus was with us and walked and talked amongst us in the human form. You will have a same type of atmosphere of a group of people in the hereafter. And God is going to look at them and say, "Why did you not pay attention to the signs? They was telling you that the world was heating up, that the atmosphere was getting hotter. They even showed you what was occurring, and you were still in denial." You'll have a same amount of people that will look at God and say, "You're a liar," because the truth not be in them. Even Jesus said that from the beginning they was a liar, and most of them was murderers from the beginning, especially Satan. Satan, the supernatural, spiritual Satan, the Antichrist himself, the one that declared war in the heavenly kingdom, is so out of his mind, so sick, so perverted, that he has perverted all these other people. He has corrupted their minds. He has contaminated the world. He has contaminated people's hearts. And he himself will go into the abyss, into hell, screaming and hollering, accusing God of being a liar and accusing God of things, knowing that the only reason why God chose to do this to Lucifer was because God did not have a choice after the mindset of what Lucifer had done. Hell was not created for man. Hell was created for Lucifer and the evangelical beings that followed after Lucifer, pertaining to the angels that used to stand in heaven that are now considered evil demonic spirits. These people are demented. They're wicked. They're evil. They're upside down in the way that they think and how they see things and how they understand things. And the more people that they can drag in with them, the better they like it. The more people that they can blind and keep blinded, the better that they like it. That's their job. They themselves become corrupt whenever they decided to challenge the Heavenly Father, the Holy Kingdom. And if they can take as many as they can pertaining to the human race, that's their job to do so. So ultimately, in the end, you have nobody to blame but yourself, because you was that naive, you was that gullible, that you rather believe a lie and think that you was believing the truth whenever you had actual data proof, pictures to verify the proof, and you knew without a shadow of a doubt that what they was telling you and preaching to you was the truth, but you rather not believe the truth because the truth not be in them. The truth was never in Lucifer towards him being a righteous evangelical being. If it was, he never would have challenged the Heavenly Father. God, the Heavenly Father, did not, I'm going to repeat it one more time, did not engineer or create the attitude and the demonic spirit that took a hold onto Lucifer's existence. Though God created the evangelical being in the beginning, he did not create the rebuke that come out of that being. And I've had people question me and say, well, how come God didn't kill him? I think God knew. This is just my opinion about that. I think God knew that if he just let him alone, it goes back to the old saying that if you give somebody enough rope, eventually they'll hang themselves. God knew that eventually, if this thing didn't play out in the form that it should play itself out in, that eventually there would be another rebellion. There would be another revoke up in heaven. And God wanted to sit back and allow for humanity to play this out. That way humanity could see this for their own selves of what type of sick, toxic intellect that had erupted in this particular evangelical being's life. And of course, God has never wanted to force any of his children to follow us because of fear or force us to do something pertaining to us being loyal out of fear. God wants us to serve him out of gratitude. Gratitude. Not out of fear. God wants our loyalty, but he wants our loyalty out of love and not out of something else. And that's where Lucifer rebelled, defied God, because Lucifer didn't no longer want to be loyal to the Heavenly Father. Lucifer had become deranged. Lucifer had become demented. And Lucifer, to this day, is trying to do the very same thing in the people's minds and hearts. And that's the reason why that it has been so difficult over here in America towards convincing people not only about the Lord Jesus Christ, of the difference between right and wrong, but that's the reason why that it has been so difficult in convincing the people here in America about the global warming issues. Even though they have had science, they have had data, they have had video, they have had proof again and again and again, they refuse to acknowledge the truth in a truthful reality form. Just like the individual last year that cut about 25 cords of wood, and he may have used up a tenth of that wood this winter. And he lives in a big house, a huge house. I think people can recognize what I live in. My space here is approximately about 650 square foot. I live in a 28-foot gooseneck RV with a 14-foot extender on it that extends out 4 more foot from the outer wall. And this is what I call home. I'm a bachelor. I don't have a lot of kids. I don't have a lot of dogs. I don't have a wife. I'm no longer trying to raise another man's family like I've been tricked into a time or two before. And this is all I need. I need a place to be able to eat. I need a refrigerator. I need a bathroom. I need water. I need a shower. I need a bed. I need a place to be able to hang my clothes. And this is all I need. Though I'm living underneath a pole barn, basically in a barn, in an RV, this is sufficient and adequate for me. Now, one day, if God decides to bring individuals into my life towards bringing a blessing to the point that I no longer have to live in this particular camper, but maybe a bigger camper, a nicer camper, a newer camper, well then, so be it. I'll cross that bridge whenever the time comes for me to cross that bridge. But as of right now, I'm still under ridiculation. I'm still under rejection. I'm still under denial. After 30 plus years of preaching the exact same message to the exact same people. If that puts people in any type of perspective of what I'm talking about pertaining to global warming, of what I just got through saying, it's really sad. It's really sad in the 21st century, in 2020, towards what occurred during the latter part of Ronald Reagan and Mr. Bush's administration, old man Bush, Mr. Bush Jr. It's really, really sad of that type of toxicity that inundated the American land that has put us where we are right now towards all these murders and all these problems. It's really sad, folks. It is sad.
Billie Eilish, one of the biggest names in music right now. If you're a dog owner or an animal lover of any kind, this video will bring you nothing but joy. This is LBD, which stands for Little Brown Dog. She belongs to astronaut Christina Cook. They're seeing each other for the first time in nearly a year. Cook spent 328 days in space. And this is how she was greeted by LBD. She broke the record for the longest single space flight for a woman. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great weekend. If it is your weekend, I'm Holly Garoni. I'll see you next time.
Woo!
Air quality update.
That was pretty neat.
And now to the closing. Major economies into negative territory. A shock decision upends one of the world's biggest football clubs. Manchester City gets a 2-year ban from the Champions League. We'll need to understand why. And all work and all life and no work. Barry Diller, the experience. The 14th, no love in the markets though. A virus outbreak is threatening to push major economies around the world into recession. The latest warning, it comes from Singapore, where the state's prime minister says it's bracing for, in his words, a significant hit and that a recession is possible. Italy could be heading for its 4th recession in over a decade. An official there says it's a danger of missing this year's growth targets, and supply chain troubles at the German automakers could help push the economy down -2. It just reported 0% growth in the 4th quarter. Meanwhile, in Asia, Macau already.
These Americans won't believe it until it hits them. And then after it hits them, they'll be laying on their deathbeds wondering Oh, I wonder how come I didn't believe that person that was telling me about the virus. Well, it was because of your own stupidity that basically brought you to your own Achilles heel. Because of your blindness and your hard-headedness that has befallen thousands of the same thing.
Deep in recession, says it will distribute more than $200 million worth of vouchers to residents once the outbreak is over. Now, the head of the Centers for Disease Control is warning that actually the epidemic, pandemic, whatever we call it, may not be over before next year.
This virus is probably with us beyond this season or beyond this year, and I think eventually the virus will find a foothold and we will get community-based transmission, and you can start to think of it in a sense like seasonal flu. The only difference is we don't understand this virus.
The coronavirus is clouding Europe's economic future. Difficult time for the bloc. It just recorded its lowest growth in 7 years, 0.1%. Effectively, that's stagnant. There's very little between plus 0.1 and minus 0.1. The euro area's three largest economies, Germany, France, and Italy, have failed to record any growth among them. Jean-Yves Fillon is the CEO of BNP Paribas in the United States. He joins me now. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
We're talking obviously about your bank, but also about this crisis.
You know, it kind of reminds me of that commercial where that ostrich is pecking on that window, and that guy looks at that camera and says, he'll figure it out. Eventually, the human race will figure out. Just like my father. He'll figure it out. Some of them, I'm afraid to say, even on their deathbeds, won't figure it out. That's the reason why God said that there'll be many who will not find that straight and narrow gate. And there will be many on that day that will say, Lord, Lord, did you not remember me towards what I done over here and what I done over there and what I said about you and how that I uplifted you and how that I was this and how that I was that? And what did God say that he would say unto them that day? Depart from me, for I, this is God speaking, for I have never known thee. I pray that on that day that I will not hear that same sound. That's the reason why I serve God routinely, daily, on a daily basis, and it has turned into a relationship, not just a ideal, not just a religion, but a relationship with God on a day-to-day basis. And if people want to denounce me as me being religious crazy or whatever, that's fine. I've learned to live with the innuendos and the false accusations and the snarls and the snares and people that want to degrade me and demoralize me. I've learned to live with all that. You know why? Because to me, I rather live with their perverted way of thinking during the time that I'm with them and me still make it into the kingdom of heaven than to hear what they're going to hear one day, which is, depart from me, for I've never known thee. You've got certain people in this area right here, within 100-mile areas, that do not believe that the coronavirus, which now they're calling it something else, 19, even exist until they get it. And there'll be some of them that will think I got something else rather than the plague. That's how demented society has become over here, this side of the equator.
These numbers are very worrying, these economic numbers. Europe is essentially stale, stagnant.
If I look at the differences between US and Europe, there is definitely stronger growth here. There is positive interest rates. And there is definitely here a very dynamic, deep capital markets. This is part of what Europe is missing there. I believe that the new administration in place is starting addressing these issues, hopefully, by the way, including probably a more reflection on a more coordinated policy mix, which hopefully can provide more fuel for further growth there.
What are your clients telling you about the underlying condition? Because your clients, in many cases, bridge the Atlantic between the US, where they're seeing reasonable growth versus Europe. What do you do?
Well, three things. My investor clients are still looking for yield. And actually, because of the network we have there, we can provide some attractive opportunities in the Eurozone and the 72 countries we have presence in. My issuer clients actually are very concerned about benefiting from optimizing their cost of funding. By the way, raising capital in euro because of the low interest rate there. Over the last year, we've actually led BNP Paribas over 50% of the euro funding of US multinationals. And it's an opportunity for them. The third thing that my clients are looking for, to be candid as well, is sustainability. It's all around because it's become one of the major risk assessment of any business model, and Europe is an opportunity for them as well.
Okay, but Europe just seems to have this sluggish growth. I was saying to you just a moment ago, it never enjoyed the best of the growth post the recession, the Great Recession, and now, look at this number, 0.1%, a 7-year low.
I think part of it is structural, as you said, but just to compare metrics as well, I see in Europe interesting consumer spending, a little bit like what we've seen here over the last few years. It's been slower in this quarter. I'm seeing as well, actually, Europe is a region of savings. There are more savings there. It's less leveraged in the US economy. And you know what? Over the last few weeks, given my position as US CEO, I've seen actually outflows of US equities into Europe, more like because I think not to contradict what you say about the status, but more like because there is a sense that investors see some upside there.
Upside from a low base. Let's talk, though, about coronavirus. How risky is this? Obviously, not for the people involved, though it's very risky, but for the Prime Minister of Singapore, you'll have woken up to and seen overnight, warns the potential of a recession there. Other countries we know are heading to recession.
You're right to say this first and foremost. It's a humanitarian situation, and the life of people is critical. But it has, no question, it has an impact on business dynamic. It will have an impact on growth. It has an impact on trade already, right? And I think most importantly, there is a significant impact on supply chain. We don't measure it yet, but it's definitely one of these, new dimension, systemic, epidemic, unpredictable, that is probably changing the world in a dimension you and I cannot really contemplate, at least medium.
In other words, ever since the mid-December, coming into 2020, now the dynamics has changed because of this coronavirus. And it's changing the dynamics of lots of other things that fall in line with this chain that has been broken, that could lead into areas of catastrophic proportions. It could. I'm hoping that it don't, but it could, is what they're trying to say here. And those who are wise, those who are smart, those who know the difference between a fairy tale and reality would take this very, very serious, in which I've said every time there's any type of program that I'm recording about the coronavirus, every time I've always explained it to my viewers. This is not Hollywood. This is not something pertaining to a fairy tale. This is the real deal that's going on in the world. Though it may not be over here yet, affecting our lives personally, it very well could be. And besides that, it could affect other parts of our lives that we can't even fathom.
term.
If we look at BNP Paribas now and the way in which the bank has pulled itself back, licked its wounds, and moves on, where's its strength now in the United States?
We here, as a US bank owned by a European firm in the United States, you have to be targeted, but you have to have critical mass. The strength here is we have a US bank with a diversified business model, retail, wholesale. You know the bank really well. It's a $6 billion revenue platform. We have 14,000 people in the United States.
14,000?
14,000 people. And this is an important driver of the group's growth.
Good to have you with us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in today, and on an appropriate day when we got these numbers from you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Now let's stay with businesses in a dreadful week. Truly dreadful for the Nissan, Renault, Mitsubishi alliance, which got worse. Renault revealed it had its worst financial performance in a decade last year. Net profit dropped 99%. I don't know how you can drop 99%. I mean, why don't you just round it up and say you made no money at all? The company made $21 million, but at the same time it earned $3.8 billion. Which raises the question, what's gone wrong? It's the fallout so fresh from the ouster of the Alliance's chief architect, Carlos Ghosn. Now, last month in Beirut, after his dramatic escape from Japan, he placed the blame on the new management.
Yes, the alliance is not going well. It's not because I am indispensable, but I think the methods which are being used today in the alliance are absolutely not efficient. And that's what worries me.
Now, it comes after a Nissan reported an 83% profit plunge. Think about it. So Renault's down, Nissan first of all 83, now Renault down 99, and it's sluggish around the world as the tensions between the companies have never been more strained in this alliance. And coronavirus promises to make things even worse. So in total, there are 122 manufacturing, but this is across the alliance. The Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi alliance, 122 plants across 35 countries. You can see the spread. This is truly global. 500,000 jobs, selling 10 million cars. Now, this is 1 in every 9 cars worldwide comes from the alliance. The range of this is extraordinary. But with all of this, it can't seemingly get it right. The man to answer this, I saw a wry smile there, Peter. Why can't they get it right?
Well, I mean, you pointed to one thing. Look at the leadership right now. This is a company that the leadership is in turmoil. Turnover at Nissan, turnover at Renault, just since Carlos Ghosn was taken away. And the industry as a whole is going through an enormously challenging time right now. These companies are going through an enormously challenging time without consistent leadership. That can't be good.
So whenever we talk about this, I always think it's good to establish, are any of the companies involved, Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi, are any of them at danger of disappearing?
No, I don't think that at this point. I don't think we're really seeing that at this point. Things don't look good. Profits are way down. There's a lot of challenges, but I think they need to get on track and get leadership in place and get on track as soon as possible.
But there's no evidence of that.
I don't think so.
I mean, Carlos Ghosn basically said, you can't run this alliance by consensus. You don't have to be a dictator. But if you're going to try and get everybody on the same page always, you will fail. And that seems to be true.
Right. You need to have somebody in charge, or at least some kind of agreement of who's in charge where. What they're doing right now is they're looking at something called a lead follow, where they have agreed that different companies, Nissan in one case, Mitsubishi in another, Renault in another, will be in charge of separate projects and try to keep everybody playing nicely that way.
And Ghosn says that won't work.
Right. And he may be right. We're going to have to see it. Can you run? Because the idea originally was an alliance, 2 companies co-equal working together, but with someone in charge.
Ghosn was trying to drive it much closer. Good to see you. We'll talk more about it. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Manchester City have been banned from the Champions League, banned, I said, for 2 years. They've been suspended for not keeping to UEFA's financial fair play rules. And also,
we're going to end right there. Once more, whenever you throw in a different entity, it can offset markets. It can bring despair into things that ordinarily was running a certain way that now may not be running that way. And of course, I'm sure a lot of the failures will be blamed upon the coronavirus that has occurred or is occurring to some certain degree, that it gives a scapegoat for a lot of these massive big organizations to say, well, it was because of this entity that occurred of the coronavirus that caused this, and this to fail. You know, everybody's got to blame something. Everybody wants to blame something on somebody else other than blaming it on themselves. So I'm pretty sure that the coronavirus will get a lot of blame for a lot of things that will leave people wondering whether or not this was legitimate or not. And we'll just have to wait it out to see how bad that the coronavirus will actually be in the year 2020. But I do know this, that since it has occurred, it has brought a lot of attention to the stock market and to companies and to the medical industry pertaining to the trade. It has brought a lot of attention into areas that 90 days ago wasn't looking at, wasn't paying no attention to. Why? Because they thought that it was smooth sailing. The motor was being run on a global front to the point that they was not paying attention to anything that could possibly affect their revenues. But now, that obviously has changed because of the troublesome times that we may be facing. Good luck to all of us. And shalom. Thanks for listening on this Valentine's 2020 message that I'll put out to my viewers a little later on. God bless.